is kind of the theme of the Godlogic Project. Got a topic tonight that's it's very timely. It's kind of heartbreaking. The more I look into this, this Ahmaud Arbery shooting, the more disturbing it is. So we're going to talk about that today with a couple of guys. I got a guy coming in from Georgia, and I got a guy here in the studio here with Second Amendment background, with concealed carry background, and the legal parts of that. So should be an interesting show. Let's do the intro, and then let's do the intro music. Then I'll introduce you to the guests. Hello, God bless, and welcome. I'm Kevin Haggerty, and this is the Godlogic Project.
Shut up, Kevin.
I got to go back to me. I'm Kevin Haggerty. That's Mike Houston, like he does every week, telling me to shut up. We're talking about the Amhaud Arbery shooting in Georgia, and this is the type of thing that, unfortunately, it happens all too often in America. But I don't think it's the epidemic that everybody thinks it is. My fear is it's the media that makes it seem like a chronic problem. Now, that doesn't mean that these terrible things don't happen. Clearly, they do. But what bothers me about all of these shootings is we never get the truth from the media. We don't get the truth from. It seems like everybody has an agenda in the media, so we never know for sure what we're supposed to believe and what we can. We're all emotion and we're no logic. So what we're going to try to do tonight is have a logical discussion about what we know so far about this shooting in Georgia. I'll give you guys first. I'm going to introduce my guests, then I'll give you kind of a chronological review of my perception of this thing, and then we'll open up conversation. The guest in the studio with me today is Jim Howard. Jim is I'll introduce yourself, Jim. Give me your background as an NRA instructor and all that kind of extra stuff you do.
I got 38 years law enforcement.
Yep, law enforcement.
And then I am an NRA instructor, but I'm also an instructor out at the academy, the police academy. I'm lead instructor out there for what we call the EOT, the equivalency training. I run a ministry, of course, of helping protect churches.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm very involved in, things that are going on around the country. We have to keep an eye on it. We have to see what's happening, the temperature that's happening for our churches and what's going on with the country. I mean, this COVID-19 thing is, it shut the churches down. We're trying to come back. How do we do it? We're talking to other churches with their safety team because they're very much involved in it. So, like I said, law enforcement experience all my life. I mean, since I was 21, I've been involved in law enforcement. So, and
this is the kind of thing you and I tend to kind of talk about and debate and review footage of. We did the church shooting in here in the studio, just the two of us. We didn't air it or anything, but we went through every inch of that video. Right. So this is something we dissect and talk about quite often. My other guest happens to be my boss, and that's Christian Ferris, coming to us live remotely on the Zoom app. Pastor Christian, introduce yourself. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great. Can we talk about the fact that we got three white guys talking about this issue?
Well,
and that I'm coming to you from South Georgia, locked up in a bunker room here with all my guns in the background. Is this appropriate?
Yeah. So already we're strike two already. Because
right.
So America knows I had my only black friend, Michael Carter, supposed to be here in the studio, and he's nowhere to be found. I hope he's all right. My guess is he's always very busy in ministry. He's a pastor down in Pinellas Park, and my guess is he's stuck in traffic because he does tend to be a last-minute arrival for the show. This would have been the third time Michael had been on here, but he's obviously not going to make it. I tried to get my buddy Mike Houston. Scheduling-wise, we couldn't get him to come in. He's in the busy season at his career, so there's no getting away from that. So it turns out we got three guys.
The only two guys that have nothing going is just me and Jim. That's basically what you're saying.
So basically, all of my friends have lives except for you two guys.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome, man.
My wife and I were going to binge watch something tonight, but that's okay.
Yeah, I'm going to be in trouble. So anyway,
yes.
We'll go through kind of. We're going to go through kind of the process of what happened with the shooting, kind of in chronological order. So this, by the way, happened. It looks like it happened February 23rd, 2020. I'll give you kind of what I know about the story, at least for now, and you guys can call in. What we're going to do is open the phone lines up in a little while and let people ask questions and kind of give us their opinions and see if we can't kind of sort this thing out. Now, this shooting here, for some reason, bothers me more than the others. So why I've been kind of thinking about this, and the three of us and the four of us have been talking about this for a few days. I heard on the news that the cops two white guys essentially lynched a black guy in Georgia. So, and then one of them was a retired cop, and that there was no charges filed. And they implied, of course, that it was because he was a retired cop and his connections in local politics, which I believe. So I apologize to retired cops all around the world, because I did in essence fall for it. I did kind of believe that that's what was happening. It turns out that that's not quite the whole story. He was supposed to have been just a jogger, and this is the part that really bothers me, because our media is willing to tell us anything to divide this country, and that's the kind of thing that really grinds my gears. So the innocent jogger was lynched was the first story. As it turns out, he had trespassed or burglarized in a home, and he was they suspected he had been responsible for some other burglaries in the neighborhood. So he and they may or may not have saw him do this, by the way, but chased him down in a car. He was running. They caught him. They had guns with him. The son gets out of the truck with a shotgun. The father's in the bed of the truck with a .357, I believe.
Well, he started out without one.
Who did?
The dad in the back of the truck. He didn't have it on him at that point. When the fight started, that's when you see him go for the gun.
Yeah, but he had it on his body. He was in the back of the bed of the truck, not in the back seat of the truck.
He wasn't showing it.
Yeah. So the kid runs around. I'm going to show the video in a minute, but the kid runs around the back of the truck and then charges the guy with the shotgun. They start wrestling and fighting over the shotgun. The black kid is, and he's a man. He's not a kid. He's 25. Is holding on to the gun with one hand, pounding this guy with the other hand. The guy pulls the trigger, or somebody pulls the trigger, and the black guy takes a hit in the hand, Amhaud Arbery, and then they keep fighting, and he shoots him, and he dies there in the street. Now, the video that they showed I have that video for you guys tonight, and it's disturbing. So if you're not comfortable watching that kind of stuff, be advised, it's disturbing. The video I saw on CNN had kind of left out a lot of the violence before and after the shooting. So again, I think they were intentionally misleading us in this department. So anyway, as this thing begins to unfold, what's really strange is I'm fooling around a little bit, looking into it a little bit today, again, for the show, and there's a lot less mention of it on YouTube already. It's died in the news cycle, at least for now. But I had initially thought that it was a Georgia lynching, and the cops covered it up. Doesn't appear to be the case, but it's still the craziest turn of events I've ever seen for a shooting. That's what makes it different than the other ones, I think, for a lot of reasons. We'll pick apart those different reasons while we watch the videos. Did you guys want to speak into, before I play the video, either of you want to speak into what you know about it so far? Have you heard anything new today that we didn't know yesterday?
Well, I'm going to jump in, because when I first heard about it, I thought that here we go again. There's a situation of where, white guys, I saw the video at first and kind of thought, yeah, two guys running down the street. This guy supposedly looks like somebody that was in a burglary, and they shoot him. And I was like, oh gosh, these guys are nuts. This is stupid, and left it at that. I didn't want to watch it anymore. And it wasn't until you contacted me and said, have you been following this? And then sent me the one video that I watched the whole video, and I said, wait a minute here. There's a lot more into this. There's a lot more going on here.
There is a lot to unpack in this, and that may be why it was so it's so striking to me. But I have first, and I'm not going to play it just yet, but I'm going to cue up the video. The strange thing is the guy that films this is following them, is friends of the two guys in the pickup truck. So we're going to fast forward to what was the first video that was released, which was I got it here on the screen now. This is Amhaud Arbery, or should be, or allegedly Amhaud Arbery, running away here. That's a white pickup truck that he's running up to, and that is the father and son, I believe, waiting for him in the white pickup truck. The son has the shotgun. The son shot him, not the father. And the father is in the back seat with, I'm guessing, a revolver in the back bed of the truck.
The back bed of the truck.
All right, so this is kind of the video here. And, again, this is disturbing, guys, if you're not comfortable seeing this kind of thing. So we see, I don't know what's wrong with the guy following him or why he's following him for that matter, but you see Arbery runs around the back of the truck to the right and then comes back and tries to grab the shotgun from the other guy. And there's the first shot. You see that puff of smoke was the first shot that went by when they believe it took his hand off. But he's still fighting away somehow, or took off part of his hand. And they are off camera now, and they come back in. And so he's fighting for his life there, or fighting for the gun, or whatever's going on. Another shot is fired, and Amhaud dies there on the street right there. And then that's the dad coming into the picture right there. So there is a lot there to look at, Jim. I don't know if you want to go back through that slowly, but I would like to get
Well, I've watched the dad. I mean, I paid attention to the dad. And if you back it up, if you do back it up, he doesn't have the gun on him. He's going into a bag to get a gun. So
the dad has a gun in a bag. He never even took the gun out?
No, he got it out. He took it out. But it was after the fight started. And so, like I said, that's kind of where I
Now, I know, Christian, I know you can't see that video. I'm going to put you on camera now. I'm kind of managing the videos with you being on the video as well, so it's a little bit awkward on my end. But what did you think, Christian, when you first saw that video on the media, on the mainstream media? Did you feel like I feel? What did you think when you saw that?
Yeah, I actually can't see it. I'm watching it on. I'm watching your live channel here, so I can see it. Everything you're doing in studio. But anyway, I like everyone else felt. I have a lot of questions, and I'm certain we'll get into more of this in depth as we get into tonight's conversation. But I feel like there is as we learn more about the situation, and we learn more about the laws that are what I consider old school cowboy laws here in Georgia, where you can chase somebody down for a citizen's arrest and do it while you're armed, is a really screwed up thing. And in my opinion, there was no reason to chase this guy down. You call 911. I mean, that's why we have the police that we have. That's why we have, that type of protection, that type of law enforcement, is to do those things for us. Because, when we say this often, that when emotion is high, logic is low. Yeah. And again, I get that these guys were, one's an ex-cop or law enforcement, whatever. But that was a very emotionally charged event that, in my opinion, could have been avoided. And I think the entire thing sucks. And I wish it would have gone very, very differently. I think that there has to be a conversation around what these guys, or why these guys felt empowered to do what they did in the way in which they did it.
And that's kind of what Jim and I talked about after this was we train in church security and in every case to de-escalate as much as you possibly can. So we talked about the other day, Jim, I wouldn't shoot somebody for stealing my car, say, unless one of my kids or grandkids were in there. But I draw a big difference, and I know legally they don't in Georgia, but there's a big difference between a property crime and a crime against persons in terms of the use of deadly force to follow. So you did a little more homework than anybody on this, Jim, with the laws in Georgia. The guy walked into a construction site that was an enclosed dwelling already, right?
Yeah. If you read what the code says, the Georgia code, it says a dwelling means any building, structure, or portion thereof which is designed or intended for occupancy for residential use. So whether it's, I know we're splitting hairs here. Let me start off by saying this one thing, though. I'm going to go back to what Christian said right there. You dial 911, and listen, if you want to follow the guy because you're just trying to keep an eye on him, have Dad in the back of the truck taking video of the guy as he runs past. I mean, this is the perfect tool that law enforcement needs to identify this guy, to arrest this guy. But you don't pull up and stop, get out with the shotgun in your hand, and not expect to have trouble. And that's where I have a problem with it. I just see that I don't want to call them cowboys or anything like that. This guy had 30 years law enforcement. I found out that the dad had 30 years law enforcement. He's a, veteran cop. But, somebody breaks into a place. He and his son chases after the guy. Don't get out of the car with a gun in your hand. Just, keep videoing it.
Yeah, you always say become the best witness ever.
Become the best witness ever. And to me, that's where the problem, when you go to the extent that they went, where they challenged him with a shotgun, it wasn't a good scene. I mean, it's just all there is to it. But when you look at what the code says, and of course this is the Georgia Code, it says a private person may arrest an offender if the offense is committed in his presence or within his immediate knowledge, if the offense is a felony, which breaking into this house was, and the offender is escaping or attempting to escape, a private person may arrest him upon reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion, which is less than what we have to have probable cause.
Yeah.
Suspicion is just is like
so the standard is lower for a private citizen than it is for a law enforcement officer.
Reasonable suspicion is I see a guy that's standing out in the on a street corner, and it's 22 degrees outside, and he's standing out with a T-shirt on.
Yeah.
There's something not right here. That's not probable cause.
That's
to
suspicious.
arrest
95 degrees out, and you come in my church with a
heavy jacket on. Yeah. That is that reasonable suspicion. But like I said, the bar is even lower. Listen, the thing that concerns me about this, and let's go on with the rest of it because you haven't really gone to it. We first saw this. And this was two white guys got out of a white pickup truck and shot and killed a black kid jogging. That's how
that was the original story. That's how it was spun.
He's a runner, and he's out running all the time and all that stuff like that. I don't want this. I'm a runner, okay? Yeah. I run 3 times a week. He didn't have running clothes on. He when you say he's a runner, I don't.
It's pretty safe to say he wasn't jogging.
No,
right?
He wasn't jogging. So.
But then here's the thing, the amazing thing, and Christian, you can speak into this a little bit. The turn of events that had to happen for this to go down the way it went down, to me, seems supernatural. I can't believe, by the way, they would be inclined to chase the guy with guns. And who in the world charges somebody with a loaded shotgun? I mean, it was just this almost had to happen this way to expose, I think, some really serious problems with gun laws. And I'm a Second Amendment guy, but I would never find myself chasing someone over a property crime. I can't imagine I would. So you're right. And here's my thing to Jim's point. Maybe he wasn't jogging. Maybe that wasn't his gig, and that's not what he was out doing. I don't care if the guy was carrying a toolbox and a chop saw that he took out of the house that he was in. He didn't deserve to die for it. And so, we're talking about, and I understand what you're getting at as far as sort of the supernatural. Like there was evil involved here. Insane.
Like if I saw somebody with a gun, my natural tendency is not going to be to charge the gun, but to run away to find protection. So how it all went down, and again, I don't have any. There's no real explanation to know why all of that part of it happened. But I will say this. I will say that it was avoidable. It didn't have to happen, and we're talking about an issue that this creates a perfect narrative or a perfect opportunity to continue the narrative that Black people are being oppressed and that a guy can't be out on a normal jog or whatever they're labeling it without feeling nervous or scared. I have a lot of Black friends. Part of my anger and angst that I feel in this is that, this is their response. They're good, hardworking African Americans, some of our Caribbean American, different parts of the world. Yeah. But here's what they say. Here's what the parents say. That could have been my son. And then they follow up with this statement. This is a real fear that we live with every day. In my opinion, the conversation needs to center around that. Do we actually have a systemic issue in our country where a white guy, I don't care if he's got 30-year law enforcement, it means nothing to me. You were a vigilante at this point. For whatever reason, you felt the need to take the law into your own hands and to solve this problem. Like, you had the right to do that. And for whatever reason, this black guy, his life meant less to you. Like, there was the value of this guy was less than the value of your life, or you would not have treated it like that, treated him the way that he did. I mean, let's talk about this from a spiritual standpoint for a minute. I have had people who have taken things from me. I have been robbed. I have had people taken things. I've not wanted to murder them. I've not wanted to pursue them, to kill them, or to fight them. From a standpoint of Christianity, a Christ follower, our response would be, hey, if he took it, he needed it, right? If you understand, we're not going out to fight. We're going out. Hey, how can I help you? How can I help you find help and wholeness? I'm not here to kill you because your life has value. I want you to discover that you're worth more than this and you're better than this, right? The people who went after us, they didn't feel that way. They didn't think that way. Now, do they feel that way only about black people? I don't know. I don't know who these guys are. They may have done the same thing if it was a white guy. Unfortunately, it was a black guy, and so we're having to have this conversation. So I guess the question that I'm asking is, do we have a real systemic issue where there are people in our country who feel that because of the color of their skin, they carry a level of superiority over others who are not the same color? And I believe the answer is yes. And I believe that's what the conversation has to center around. How do we fix that problem?
Well, I think we can fix that problem, and it is what the conversation has to center around. But I think we need to be more careful with how we have that conversation, because he wasn't shot. He wasn't shot because he trespassed on a construction site. He was shot because he tried to fight a guy over a shotgun. So then the argument becomes,
well, what would you do if you had a gun coming at you?
He didn't have a gun coming at him, and I wouldn't charge the guy with the gun.
But hold up. Why were these guys coming after him with the gun? That's the problem that I have.
Yeah, well, that's a whole different problem.
There's a law, but there's a law that gave those guys, that made those guys feel justified in approaching some man with a gun. That pisses me off. That law needs to change.
Yeah, I would agree with you with that. But you can't make the arguments emotionally and try to be logical, like you said in the beginning. So he wouldn't have been, if they were going to shoot him, there would be no reason to stop the truck. So if it was just a lynching, they could have just shot him from the truck. He was shot technically because he was wrestling with a guy over a shotgun. And by the way, once you start wrestling over a gun, you both have a reasonable expectation of bodily harm. Either one of them could have shot either one of them at that time, and Jim would know better than me. At that point, either one would be justified self-defense. Is that true, or is that crazy?
All right. Well, first off, I think we've gotten off on a tangent, because I think everybody in this room agrees that what has happened is a tragic story, no matter how you look at it. And the other thing is, I agree with Christian on. I'll just tell you a quick story. One of my neighbors, one of my good friends, called me the other day and said, "Hey, there were kids outside trying to steal my neighbor's car. Should I went out and approach them?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, I didn't." And I said, "Good." He said, he saw 3 kids, maybe 4. And next thing you know, there's 5. I said, "You probably would have got yourself hurt, and why? Or somebody else would have gotten hurt. So why would you do that? Become the best witness ever, like we talk about." And he videoed it and everything else. He could have he's got guns. He's a shooter. He could have easily walked out with a gun and said, "Hey, what you're doing here, everybody on the ground." He probably would have got himself hurt. I just go back to that, when we allow these things to continuously happen, because I can tell you right now, this is not the first time this has happened. This is not the first time that people have went out to make a citizen's arrest and use a gun to do it.
Really?
This isn't the first time. No,
I mean, imagine people would do that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm for sure that if you went to Georgia, you would find that this is kind of maybe not a everyday event, but a common event, that when somebody does something that's a felony, because it states in here, a felony, okay? If the offender is committed to, it doesn't even say felony here. I'm sitting here, oh, it is. If the offense is a felony. I thought there was. But I mean, the thing of it is a terrible situation. Let's make sure that everyone in this room agrees with that 1,000%.
Yeah.
It's just that it is the perfect storm.
It's amazing to me how it had to come together for this to happen.
But we are looking at it that just the 2 white guys were wrong, And it doesn't, two wrongs don't make a right in this, you know. But there's more to the case. And what bothers me is we're going to be put through this trial. The family's going to be put through this trial. And if you look at the evidence that seems to be coming out right now, there's a good possibility these guys are going to get off.
I can't even figure out. We talked about it before the show. Besides aggravated assault, what could they charge him with?
They've
been charged, by the way, so everybody knows. They've been charged with murder and aggravated assault, the father and the son. They're trying to charge the third guy with the video camera, and they're trying to also get the feds to
crime.
Make it a hate crime.
Right.
So, and they probably have to. I mean, I don't know what the standards are for a hate crime, but the crime they have on their hands right now, where is the crime? I can't find a Georgia law statute. And I'm not a lawyer, but I've been kind of digging into this. Have they, unless he pointed the shotgun at him, was my only thing. Can you think of a law they broke? That's the horrible part.
I don't know. Like I said, in the cases of arrest, use whatever force necessary to make the arrest. Okay, that's one of the things that they're going to kind of say. You know, they don't know this guy from Adam. Or think of it this way: even if the dad did know him because he did know him previously of carrying a gun to a
the kids had some problems. The guys had some problems in the past, and it sounds like the father, the retired cop, has arrested and processed.
He
Aubrey
was involved
before.
in an investigation where this is what the papers are saying. Trust us, this is just what they're saying. I don't have it in front of me.
We're not looking at the documents.
Yeah, but the document, the news article said that one of the prosecuting attorneys pulled herself off of it because she had worked a case with him where he was the victim had carried a gun to a basketball game
at high school basketball game, and he was 19 years old when this happened. Did he recognize him? That adds even more to it. I mean, it is the perfect storm. It's just that it's dragging us through this, what we're talking about, when as Christians talking about, that's not the topic of conversation that we should be having right now. We should not have this type of environment to where people feel that way. Yeah.
But look.
So then what creates that environment? So is it I'm under the impression that things are worse in 2020 than when they were when I was a kid in the 80s.
Well,
race-wise.
I think things got worse. I was hoping that somebody would come into the White House, and I'll probably get in trouble with this, and be the great uniter. I was really excited hoping that that's what was going to happen, and it didn't, and it disappointed me. Yeah. I did not feel that way, you know. But, I mean, and he added, fuel to the fire on several different cases, which involved a black person and a white officer, or a black person and a white
Obama, you mean?
Yeah, well.
Yeah. And he wasn't, I don't think he was a very big fan of law enforcement either. And that could be cultural, I guess. But. So then how do we get, and I'm going to open the phones here in a little bit so we can let people call in and kind of speak into this if they want or can. But so we have the legal decision to chase these guys with guns, it appears. We have which is already bizarre to me. Then the guy turns, and instead of running, he comes back for the shotgun. So my guess is he wasn't pointing the shotgun. Who would charge a shotgun that's pointed at you? I think there's a lot we don't know between the relationship between the dad and Arbery. It's just the whole thing is amazing to me. And most of these types of cases, most of these national cases have more holes in them than Swiss cheese, but this one really doesn't. I mean,
well, the thing that we need to make sure that people understand is that Arbery went into a house. He was seen by multiple people going into this house. When they called 911 and said to dispatch, we have a guy inside the house, dispatch started units that way, so they think that there's a break-in going on themselves. So we need to add that part in there. When he came out, he was confronted by a person, and when the person told him to stop, he took off running.
Right, and he was on the phone with the cops apparently. That guy that we'll show that video in a minute.
That's when that's when this whole thing started to unravel.
So let me ask you, Christian. I'm going to put you back on to me, what really is one of the things that are so troubling about this is it's hard to get to the truth because it's always people on the right are going to say A, people on the left are going to say B, and then so people in the middle spend most of their time trying to figure out what the truth is here, right? What do you think of the state of race relations right now, and what role is the media playing in that? Because they seem to me to want us fighting over these things. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Well, I'm super frustrated by this whole conversation because, again, I'm not exactly sure what it is that we're unpacking here, because I think that there are, and I'm going to go back to something I said a minute ago, that the fact that there is a law that justifies a human being who is not an officer of the law, who is not a practicing officer of the law, to be able to do what they did is antiquated. It's primitive. It's 1800 cowboy law. It makes no sense to me. What do we have police for if citizens are allowed, to just make these kinds of calls in their mind? I'm frustrated by the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this to answer your question. Yes, I do believe the media. I believe they prey on these types of things because they're looking for ratings, and it helps to push narratives that they're responsible for creating and pushing. But I will go as far to say is that we have a systemic issue, that there is a systemic issue from the very top, from a government top down, that is a issue of divisiveness between race and color. And what I'm about to say may not be very popular. I don't care. But if you look at, and this goes way back to earlier presidents, and I don't remember exactly which president was responsible for this, but we're not just divided in our thoughts and emotions towards one another. We're actually divided in our demography. And in certain cities, like I'll put it this way. When I was growing up, everybody knew that when you got down to St. Pete, to First Avenue North, and then Central Avenue, as soon as you cross Central Avenue, you were in what they called the projects, Jordan Park, and it is where the black communities lived. And so they had this division called Central Avenue. The whites lived on the north side, the blacks lived on the south side. In the city that I live in today, you literally can cross a bridge over the Intercoastal Waterway. On the north side of the bridge, big, gigantic houses, all white people. You cross a bridge. It is a small body of water. The very next neighborhood are black neighborhoods. There is a systemic issue of demographic division. So the divisiveness, again, is not just what we see emotionally and mentally. It is actually a physical demographic reality. And so I think that creates a narrative in these types of situations that make it more difficult for people to reconcile, specifically people from the black communities. They do feel oppressed. And so it's easy to take a situation like this, knowing what we know about these systemic issues that we have in our societies, and go, see, I told you we're hated by the white people. And if this guy gets off, it's going to be just more white power and more white privilege. And we're going to have to riot to make our, to let people know that we are oppressed. And so I have had, my position allows me to have lots and lots of conversations with the African-American community, Caribbean-American community, and so forth. I was sitting having a conversation in a restaurant with a black guy, a very good friend of mine, sharp guy, very successful. And he said, you want to know what it's like to be a black guy in America? He said, look around this restaurant. Now, the restaurant was jammed. He said, I want you to point out one other black person in this restaurant. And I scanned the entire restaurant, and I found one black guy in the corner. And I said, there's one other guy over there. He said, now imagine being a white person in an all black world. And that was your reality. You're walking in a restaurant, and that's what you see, except for the neighborhoods or the places where we all congregate and dwell. And it was a real eye opener for me that they really do. What they're feeling is real to them. What they see and what they experience is real to them. And situations like this make it difficult for me to to have a conversation with them and reconcile that what they're saying is not true, or that there isn't some legitimacy behind what they're feeling. So that's the struggle for me in trying to bring people together when you have these, when you have these types of situations that make it look like these two guys were after this guy because he was, again, I'm not saying he wasn't doing a crime, but because he was black, it makes the conversation very, very difficult.
And that's the difficult part of doing this show. I've never been so nervous or uncomfortable, not nervous, but uncomfortable about doing a show. I even changed the thumbnail at the last minute this morning because I didn't want to be part of the problem. I didn't want to be seen as a part of the problem like I think the mainstream media is. But
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I just, this is the type of thing that they continuously push out there, and everybody sees it and thinks the same thing, the same thing that Christian thinks. Christian, I just want to say this one thing. When I went out and started doing this research on, arrest by private person, that's what the procedure is called. There were like several different retired chief of police that were saying this is the worst law that we can put out here, because what's going to happen is something like this.
Yeah.
Something exactly like this. So, there's, I don't know. I think the thing that, like I said, bothers me the most is that they're probably, who knows, by law, if we were to look at the law, they might get off. I've been wrong before. If I'm wrong, okay, fine. They have to accept what happens. But if they do get off, then we've got to deal with all the other stuff that's going to happen behind it.
And it's not just that community. At this point, the whole country is going through the same thing.
Yeah, the whole country's thinking the same.
I'm going to show the video. This video is in double time, but we're going to kind of pause and talk our way through it. The GBI, which is the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, I'm guessing, is looking into additional footage. So this footage wasn't released, wasn't leaked out right away, but it has been leaked out. And so this is, you guys will be able to watch this with us, and I'll kind of pause it as we go. But this is surveillance camera from a house uninvolved across the street. And up here on the top right, you'll see the construction house here with a portalet and looks like a big steel garage. Here's Arbery walking up. He stops in front of the construction house. You'll see him pop out behind that tree, stops, kind of looks around a little bit, heads into the garage. There's no garage door, at least it's up. The rest of the house seems enclosed, so there's doors and windows. So if he's trying to get into the house, he can't get in through the garage. Looks like he went around the back first, and then he comes back out. I think he goes in the front door, right, or he go in the back door. So the top right of the screen, folks, you can see it here. This is the construction house, and you'll see him go into the house. And in a couple of minutes, this tape is in double time, by the way, it looks like, so things are happening faster. Those seconds are clicking by a lot quicker. But the
you're going to see a person up here in the left now that comes out. Yeah, an unidentified figure.
So the top left is a neighbor comes out, and he's on. It looks like he's pacing in his driveway on the phone, and he.
Can you pause it for a sec right there? Can you pause it for a second right there?
Yeah.
Okay. See, this is where it bothers me. An unidentified figure enters the upper left frame. It's unclear what he's doing. Now, why did you have to put that in there? Police report says a neighbor called 911 about this time.
Yeah.
To
so
report someone.
We know he's on the phone. We already know he's the guy that called the police about it, right?
But it's unclear what he's doing. But they're very clear about everything else.
Yeah.
You know?
So the guy's pacing in his driveway. I'm guessing he's on the phone, and he yells at. Looks like I'm guessing he yells at Arbery, because you're going to see him exit the front of the building here in just now. There's a little something by that window, but you're going to see there goes the car, and Arbery runs down the street. At double time, he's already at the top left running down the street. So this guy is over here on the phone, and he's walking up and down the street on the top left. And then I'm going to fast forward a little bit if it doesn't. The upper left of the frame, two unidentified figures appear to move near a parked white truck in the vicinity of Travis Michael's address. Well, I guess I know what they're saying there. So I think they mean the top right. I think this is the only white truck I see.
It doesn't leave. That truck doesn't leave.
That stays there. So somewhere over here, maybe that right there is a white truck. I don't know. So this is the other two. These are the guys apparently that were that witnessed the thing. This guy's walking down the street. I believe it's the guy on the phone. He comes back here in a minute. So this
there goes the truck.
This is all separate. You saw a truck leave?
Yeah, finally.
Okay, so a truck left, and that's presumably the two guys that that were chasing Arbery. Then I forget their names, McMichaels. I don't know their first names, but their last names are McMichaels, I believe. Now you're going to see a cop car drive by slowly here in a second. Any second now, you'll see a cop car drive by slowly here. Now, this is in double time, so it looks like they're moving a little quicker than they are. But cops are going to go by, like I said, any second, cops, any second. Any second now. Police car. I'm going to fast forward so we're not just, all right. Police cruiser drives by the construction site right now. And he's going to move from the top right to the left of your frame there. And I'm guessing he's just driving at regular speed because he's in a neighborhood, and this video is twice the time. And then you're going to have a utility truck drive by, make a left on whatever that side street is there. And that's happening right there. You see him making the left. And then you're going to see here in a second police cruiser comes by, and this guy is double timing. So I'm guessing the shots have already been fired now. And, Jim, you can talk into that in a second.
Yeah, I mean,
but why would he be responding to a burglary in a neighborhood that fast? That guy's flying down the street there.
I'm for sure that was the shooting that happened.
So so that led to the first video we saw. Now this video, I played them backwards because the videos were leaked out backwards, but that's kind of the scenario there. So do the neighbors, would that count as, Jim, you would know this better than anybody, would that count as a reasonable suspicion? They don't need probable cause, but reasonable suspicion, having probably watched this from down the street, I'm guessing.
Look, until they get out of the cars with the guns, they're doing great.
Yeah.
You know, let's videotape it. Let's like I said, be inside the vehicle, drive by and videotaping it. Hey, I'm getting this for the police. I'm getting this for the police. I tell this story, real quick police story. We had a bunch of vehicle burglaries down in Bel Air. One of the guys that lived on the street corner had this incredible surveillance system. So he catches this young kid trying to break into his van, and he had what they called a high and tight, you know, the haircut that's real tight on the side and high. And there was a couple of times he looked right at the camera, and I had great video of him, but we didn't know who he was. Several weeks later, we had another vehicle burglary, and we had a fingerprint in it. And so when we ran the fingerprint, it came back to this kid, and when I pulled him up, because of that picture, it was him. I mean, There was no doubt, you know. And we brought him in and interviewed him, and he confessed. But, I mean, it was because we had the video. It helped us out. If they'd have just got the video, they would have identified this guy.
Yeah, they didn't have
to do what they did.
And this is what we train our people to do constantly. Do not escalate the whole thing.
And and why they felt like they had to do it, I just don't understand. I'm with Christian on this.
It's insanity.
It's insanity. It is the perfect storm. This had to happen to maybe laws get changed.
Yeah, and I think I don't want to ruin the end of the story, but I think that's the problem is these laws. Christian touched on it. And some of the comments on Facebook, on YouTube are the same. It's the laws that have to change. Have you seen that second video, Christian, or did you get a chance to see that second video? And what do you think about that?
Yeah, I saw it. I love what Jim just said, man. I think that is the key point in this entire conversation. And I feel like he just basically summed up this whole thing, that they were doing perfectly fine. They were doing perfectly well in the car with the video. All of that was good and okay. The train derailed when they got out and took matters into their own hand. And so, yeah, I've seen the videos. I think we can watch these things till we're blue in the face. Everybody's going to come out with an opinion. Unfortunately, ours doesn't matter. What does matter is what the judge says, the lawyers say, the jury says, that's all that's going to matter at the end of the day. I am praying, and I am hoping, back to Jim's, all of our points here is that this creates a conversation that forces us to look at things that may be broken, laws, systems that may be broken, systemic issues that can be fixed, that can be changed to help change the narrative in our country. I just want everybody to know that I would be feeling this. I would feel this exact same way if that was some white kid that got killed by these two white guys.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for me, it's not about it's not about that this was a black kid and we're all of the issues of oppression and all that stuff. I don't feel that. I don't know that. What I'm talking about, I'm talking about from the context of the value of life. Does life matter? And are we supposed to behave differently because life does matter? Here's what this is. One of the things that really upsets me that people say, well, stop acting like this. He was innocent. He's not innocent. He was doing crime. He was in the middle of a crime. And so you can't cry, victim. Okay. I mean, come on. You're right. He was in the middle of a crime, but does his life matter? And, again, this for me always comes back to a spiritual thing. We don't have, we are so fundamentally broken. And I'm going to say something that's this is so off track here, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I believe the church is fundamentally broken in this area, that we're waiting for the government to legislate morality. We want the government to legislate morality. That's how fundamentally broken we are. If the church was doing a good job, we would not be waiting for government to constantly legislate morality for us. I don't care what the issue is, abortion, homosexuality, whatever it is that the subject of the conversation is. And so this isn't, yes, do we need to change laws? Yes, we do. Do we need to evaluate some of these things? Absolutely we do. But we also need to have a talk about the heart. How do we captivate the hearts of men where they don't feel, to Jim's point, why did you feel like you had to get out of the car and do this? Like, at what point was, what was going through your mind? Let me back up and say this way. What do you feel about your own life that made you feel like you had to get out and do this, that resulted in taking the life of somebody else? This is a heart issue. And I think that all sin problems that we are surrounded by, and this entropy that we're all cursed by, it comes back to a heart issue. How do we change a man's heart, and how do we do we tackle this issue from a spiritual standpoint? So yeah, let's change laws all day long, but change laws don't change man's heart. We're not talking about behavior modification here. We're talking about the need for real transformation. Yeah, the only one that can do that, of course, is the Spirit of God.
And it is very much a worldview problem. So and you and I train all the time on this stuff, but that doesn't mean that everybody does, right? So
right.
It
is a transformation of the heart. And I like the way you said it, Christian. And I wanted to throw another story out here. I went with my daughter one time, one of my daughters, on a field trip down in Tampa. And of course there was like 20-something kids there, and they're walking across the street and they have a green light. Well, they had the right of way, and all of a sudden the light changes, and now they're kind of like, they're slowing traffic down. Well, this guy comes up, and he doesn't like run in the crowd, but he comes up and he opens his car door. He doesn't roll down his window. He opens his car door and he starts screaming at him. And he says, "Get out of the road. What are you teaching your kids?" I said, "Buddy, it's a field trip." And he goes, "Get it. This is what you're teaching them." And of course, in my mind, because I'm armed during this time frame, I'm taking one more step out of that car, pal, and we're going to have issues. And I just looked at him and I said, "It appears that you have," and like parents are standing here. And I said, "It appears that you're having a bad day. So I'm going to say a quick prayer for you." And he slammed the car door and left. And one of the parents goes, "I've got to remember that, because instead of just yelling back at this guy, to protect the kids, I was going to protect the kids. Please don't step out of the vehicle. But I just looked at him and said, apparently you're having a bad day. I'm going to pray for you, right now." Isn't that the way?
See, that right there.
Yeah.
That right there. That story and illustration is the point. I mean,
yeah.
Dude, Jim just nailed it to the wall.
Well, and think about it for a second. If the guy would have got out of the vehicle without a shotgun in his hand, maybe armed,
you'd have had to do business.
Yeah, and said, "Hey, listen, you might as well stop running.
We know who you are.
We know who you are. We got plenty of video. Shoot, if the dad in the back of the truck recognized him and said, 'Hey, look, I know you. I know where you live. So, just don't run. Just let's get it over with. Just wait for the police right now. Let's pray for each other. This isn't that bad. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that you can add to this conversation. But instead, we take a step out with a shotgun.
That's what's missing.
That escalates everything.
And we wanted a godless America, and this is what it looks like. Yeah. That's the part that breaks my heart.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break. I've opened the phone lines. I encourage you guys to call in. The phone number is on the screen, guys, so it's a little awkward because I'm the engineer and the host when I answer the phone. First, I want to thank you guys for supporting the Godlogic Project. Subscribing to it is a big help. If you're not subscribed yet, please do. Encourage other people to do the same. Comment, give it thumbs up. That helps in the algorithms. And if you see our stuff on social media, please share it. It helps to raise awareness for this ministry. Again, everybody shopping at Amazon, going to godlogicproject.com first, clicking on the Amazon logo. Amazon sending a couple of bucks to help pay the monthly bills for this podcast studio. So I really do appreciate you guys doing all those things. I'm going to read some of the comments from the YouTube feed. A lot of people saying hello. Ben Clark says people in the middle are trying to justify their silence, and that's an interesting point. So people might be afraid. I consider myself in the middle, by the way, but people might be afraid to open up a conversation from not having the full left-wing conviction or not having the full right-wing conviction. It's very uncomfortable to get in some of these conversations, which is kind of why we started the Godlogic Project in the first place. Lauren Herman's watching. Hi, Lauren. She thinks, and I agree with her, the laws in Georgia are the problem. Christian touched on that. They're antiquated, and unless, to me, it just seems like unless there's bodily injury, imminent bodily injury, guns shouldn't play a part in it, at least for, maybe not for cops too, but at least for private citizens or even retired cops. Adam Robertson agrees. Father and son shouldn't have done it. Arbery shouldn't have been involved in it either. Shouldn't have been going into that property in the first place. If you're going to, you've got to be, your actions and your decisions have consequences. Unfortunately, these consequences are horrible. They're disproportionate, very hard. Kerry Corbett says, well put, Jim. Hello, Kerry.
Kerry, how's it going, bro?
Everybody,
happy birthday.
Everybody's pretty much just saying hello to Kerry now. Kerry's on the line. So me and Christian are out. Kerry's in. That's pretty much the way it goes. The phone lines are open. If you guys are comfortable calling in on this topic, if you'd like to speak into this topic, and so my guests know it's a little bit awkward for me to answer the phones while I'm managing the conversation too. So things generally get a little bit awkward when people call in. But go ahead, Chris.
I want to say something about Ben Clark's statement. He said that people in the middle are trying to justify their silence. I couldn't agree more with him. And I think that is one of the things that causes people to maybe overreact who have not said something before but believe that there's a problem. And I think one of the biggest issues that we have in this conversation is that we don't know how to respond. We don't know how to react. We don't know what to do. And if you have been silent on this issue at all, I've noticed people, and I've watched people on Facebook who I've never seen them get involved in anything before like this are now starting to say something. They're like, you know what? I don't want to be silent anymore. And so I think we have to be careful, because the tendency for all of us, the human propensity is to sort of, my dad used to say it this way, allow the pendulum to swing from stupid to stupid, right? Yeah. And so the thing that we have to do is we have to keep the pendulum balanced and keep it in the middle. Kevin, you said something very wise to me. I put something out on Facebook. I was frustrated, and I had put something out, and you sent me a private text. You said, hey, you might want to be careful before you get into this. This thing could be real quickly. Yeah, and I said, well, what are you talking about? And then you sent me another video, and there was other pieces of the story and so forth. And so I said, that's great advice. I need to evaluate everything. I want to go back to something I said in the beginning of the show, that when emotion is high, logic is low. And so if we're all emotional about this, we're going to be also illogical. We become irrational and disproportionate in things. And so I think that we just have to be balanced in this. And I will go on the record to say this, that if there is a law, this is not going to be popular, but if there is a law that justified what these men did, and they get off on a technicality of a law, good for them. Okay, they escaped by a law that was in their favor. But I will also go on record to say that the law is stupid and it needs to be evaluated. And Jim said something that troubled me in the beginning, that citizens have a less pressure, responsibility, and to be cognitive or whatever in their. lower standard than than an actual police officer. That is a very troubling reality. If that's true, I don't know. He knows way more about this than I do. If that's true, and I believe it is, or he wouldn't say it, we have a problem. There's a problem. And I believe as we continue to get further and further, as we become more and more depraved and we become more and more deprived of the God reality in our life, we're going to see more and more of this type of social injustice happening. And again, it goes back to, we need to not wait for the government to legislate morality. We need to be a voice for this morality and helping people to live this out in their heart and lives. And
Scripture should guide us through that process. Here's the thing, and this is kind of why we started. Well, you guys both have had front seats for the Godlogic Project since it began last year. We go straight from trying to have a logical conversation about very tough issues, which is what we try to do in the Godlogic Project, to calling each other names and getting upset and getting emotional. It seems to me, and you've heard me say this 100 times, if your argument gets emotional, it's because your logic is failing. Your logical argument is beginning to fall apart. Otherwise, you wouldn't be getting so emotional, right? So it is, to Ben's point, it's very hard to talk about these things. I'm impressed and I admire the people that would even comment on YouTube the things they commented, because this is, well, look at it this way. Nobody's calling in, right? This is a hot topic issue. Nobody's calling in, so they can call in anonymously. I admire the people on YouTube that were speaking into it. I admire you guys for being here. People don't like to have these conversations.
Wendy's last words before I walked out the door, make sure you don't say anything that, hurts us. And I was like, what am I saying? I'm going to be telling the truth, not trying to, I don't know. It is hard. 5 minutes before we started, Christian, I looked at Kevin and I said, 3 white guys talking about this situation. Maybe we need to change the subject, because it's not going to go over well. It's just not going to go over well.
Right.
And the thing
but I would like to say, Jim, though, that maybe three white guys need to have this conversation, and maybe 3 white guys having this conversation could be the catalyst to other white people having a conversation about the things that we need to be having a conversation about. Like I know it's uncomfortable, but I think we need to step into what is uncomfortable. And again, back to Ben Clark's point, if there is silence on this, how do we break the silence, and what do we do to break that silence? And so it is an intimidating conversation, but I think we have the right heart. Like the Father knows our heart. He knows our heart, and he knows that we are, we're deeply concerned with the equality of life, with the value of life, with the transformation of a man's heart. Like that matters to us. And so I feel like guys like us should be having this conversation. And
don't get me wrong. I think we should be having this conversation, but I'd like to have the other point of view in here too. I would like to, I have a hard time when we start talking about privilege and different things like that because of my childhood. I grew up on the other side of the tracks. I was the guy that everybody shunned because he couldn't afford the car, he couldn't afford this, he couldn't afford this. We lived on food stamps. My mom worked 3 jobs, all those different things like that. I told Kevin a story where I worked at a place where I hung out with the black guys and got fired over it. And so when people would say racist things, it would infuriate me. And I get upset about it now. I get upset about it now because we can't have a good conversation over it. We totally, this has just gotten so, it seems like out of hand that I just don't know where it's going to go. But I would love to sit down and have this conversation. I have a friend of mine that constantly wants to get together a mixed group and sit down and talk about this. And guess what? Nobody wants to come to the table. I'm there. Yeah. He says, hey, we're going to meet here. I'm there. But nobody else shows up. So how do you have the conversation?
So you think that's a matter of they don't know what they believe on the issue, or they're ashamed or afraid?
No, I think it's been ingrained inside our hearts for so long that this has become a part of the culture that we live in. Look at all the other things that we see. You go back and talk about it. You said abortion. Let's talk about child pornography. Let's talk about all these different things that the church has just really covered their eyes up. And I'm thankful for the pastor that I have that comes out and talks about these things. I know, Christian, you come out and talk about these things. How did your church get here? It was over controversy. I mean, you started, dealing with issues, true life issues. Yeah. And we don't do these things. I mean, we don't talk about these things. And that's what drives me nuts.
It's gotten to the point where I really worry long term for our country,
our kids,
because we've moved the lines a little bit. People don't know where the lines of hate and ignorance and just hate, and the line between hate and ignorance, which are two different things. We've kind of taken the hate out of hate speech. So anything that someone disagrees with, they can call it hate speech, and everybody's on board. So you end up, what happens is they quell or stop the conversation from even happening. So, and again, then it's admirable that people like us and you guys and the people on the YouTube feed are willing to take a minute and listen to this and talk about it, because that's not commonplace. And people exist in intellectual bubbles, and the reason why bad ideas seem like good ideas is because you only discuss them with people that agree with you in the first place. Right. That's why we have a left-wing and a right-wing media in this country. It's insanity.
You're also talking about a world, and I'm speaking specifically about our nation, America, that is now considered a full post-Christian nation. Yeah. And it's a post-Christian America. So what do we mean by post-Christian? Well, before that, my dad's era, they were exposed to God first and to moral culpabilities first, and then they viewed the world and unspiritual things through the lenses of that God factor, right? That's a Christian nation. A post-Christian nation is that they're exposed to secularism first, and they're trying to reconcile God through those secular lenses. And so that makes what we do very difficult, but it also makes what we do very important. And so this concept of this idea that the church has to be this sort of sneaky little, they have to posture themselves as this sort of sneaky, cool, entertaining type of a enigma so that people will pay attention. I mean, I get why we do it, but we're living now in a place where truth is so hard to find. And it's such a hard thing for people to grab a hold of, that when they see it and when truth is presented to them and there's something that actually it has some teeth to it and there's some backing behind it, they run to it, and they want to sit, they want to listen, they want to have a conversation around it. And so I think that we have to realize that our narrative has changed because of the fact that we're in a post-Christian generation. So my children, and I'm talking not specifically mine, but the age of my children, they're being exposed to secularism first, and then we're asking them to reconcile morality through the lenses of secularism. Well, that's a very difficult thing to do. And so we're up against and I don't know that we can ever flip that script. I don't, this idea that we're going to win America back and it's going to go, I don't believe that that's going to happen. But I do believe that we can help guide the conversation, and we guide that conversation by not being afraid or intimidated to speak the truth into situations like this situation right here, or whatever else it may be, abortion, pornography, whatever. Right. We're speaking truth into that.
Right. And that's what makes the Godlogic Project a project, right? Because who knows if this is going to work. I could easily, by the way, I used to do stand-up comedy. I could easily tear people up on this show and probably have 10 times the subscribers I have now. But there's a commitment to intellectual and logical discourse at this table. I don't know if you guys can tell on TV, but we have a table. It's kind of the theme to be invited to the table. But I've had people tell me that you're crazy for talking about the things you talk about on that show. I mean, that's not a reflection of me as being some kind of idyllic example, but that's a reflection of society in general, that we should be having these conversations. We should be able to talk about these things. And I mean, you guys watch the show all the time. We talk about things that nobody else wants to talk about, and it's uncomfortable. And I know it's uncomfortable because I don't want to talk about it either.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where this goes tomorrow, because of some of the problems that you've run into.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see where this goes with, and it'll be interesting to see what is said afterwards. Because a lot of people that don't watch the show right now will watch it later. And it's like, how many people are going to be upset because we even sat down and had this conversation? Yeah. And it's exactly what you said, Christian. It's like we need to be the ones making these conversations. But how much, it's like after a period of time, you kind of get tired of it, and you kind of want to buy that place he's got in Georgia.
And get away from it all.
Get away from it all, so that you don't have to be hearing all this, because it beats everybody.
That's an easy it's an easy temptation. And, one of the things that we've evaluated in this time that we've been out here is that our season and our time where we're at isn't done, because the voice of what we have, what we're doing, what God has given us, and the truth that we have been exposed to, and that we have in our hearts, is supposed to be shared. We have a calling.
Yes.
We weren't just called to be disciples; we were called to make disciples. And we can all run and retreat and hide out, or we can continue to be a lighthouse. One of the things that my business partner, who actually owns the property I'm at, Ed Coble here, the Lord told us in the very beginning of this, be a lighthouse. Yeah. And man, we have had more events. We have done more. We have worked with literally hundreds of men and women around this country over the last 9 weeks, more so than I have done in the whole beginning of the year combined. The doors that God was opening for us to just really influence and transform and change. And I'm talking from California to Seattle, all the way to Florida, everything in between, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of men and women. And so I think that's how we have to look at this and say, we may be a voice, but we are a voice.
Yeah.
It may only be one voice, but it's still a voice. And how are one of the questions we have to ask every day is, how are we stewarding the platform that God has given me today? I believe that if we want a bigger platform tomorrow, and we want the reach of our influence to increase tomorrow, we better start stewarding the platforms that we have today, because God is a wise investor, and he's not going to increase the reach of your influence tomorrow if you're not stewarding the influence that he's given you today.
Exactly.
How are we doing that? How are we stewarding that influence today? And, we have a tendency to look at our situation and go, well, I just have a small platform and I'm just pastoring this little small church here, or, I'm only running 1,000 here. The guy's down the road running 5,000. And I think this sort of comparison game that we play kills us. We have to look at the platforms that we have in front of us today and do the best we can every day with those platforms. And God then eventually starts to increase it. And so can you imagine what it would look like if all of us, regardless of the size of our platform, if we started stewarding them well every day? Can you imagine what that looks like a year from now? Yeah. And the increase of the reach of our influence around the country?
You said something a while back. I'm going to switch to Jim in a second, but you said, why don't we begin to, or shouldn't we begin to judge our success by our footwork rather than by the results? If we're abiding in the John 15 vine, the results, the fruit is none of our business anyway, right? So that made 1,000%. That made a big difference to me in terms of starting a podcast. I'm a disabled plumber. This was the last thing in the world that would be a good idea.
Yeah, the stuff that we're doing on Zoom right now. I mean, I fought that. Wendy was the one that pushed it. This virus comes out, we started using it. But I want to go back to what Christian was talking about. Our study this week was in Luke 19, where, Christ talks about, what do you do with your minas? That, I give you 10, go out and use them. What are you doing with the talents that he gives you? What are you doing out here? And right now, so many people are sitting at the house thinking, oh, gosh, I can't go anywhere. I can't talk to anybody. I can't do anything. This is an opportunity, like you said. I've said this all along. We need to be the lighthouses. I've said that 1,000 times since this has started. The Lord's Prayer, your will be done. What am I doing right now, Lord, during this time frame? This is an opportunity to be doing something.
And are you being idle, or are you still trying to make a difference, even under these circumstances? I can tell you both that we have lost and regained 2 cameras since the show started. So whatever we're talking about, I always think of that as confirmation, Christian. So we are certainly, the enemy does not want us having this conversation. He wants us divided and not united and healing as a nation and as a multicultural nation. So I'm convinced that the enemy doesn't want us to have this conversation. He's trying to knock out my cameras, but I'm not going to have it, Jimmy. I won't have it.
Let's fight it.
So it doesn't look like we're getting a ton of phone calls. I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up in a minute. I do appreciate, like I said earlier, everybody that supports the Godlogic Project. If you would subscribe, ring the alert bell. You'll be alerted every time we put up new content, and share our content on social media. It makes a big difference. Jim alluded to it a little bit earlier, but I'm a little suspicious of the algorithms lately, because depending on my topic, I went from 16-18% suggested video watches to 0 for some of my videos. So I think I'm in secret YouTube jail, but I don't really know how all that works. So, but you sharing my stuff would override that. So subscribe, share, And again, if there's anything I can do for you guys, if you're struggling in any way, spiritually, chemically, any kind of addictive problems you might have, if you just need prayer, message me at godlogicproject.com. I'll reach out to you. I'll help you if I can. I'll find somebody if I can't that can. And I'm going to go around the room now and see just kind of parting thoughts on this. And let's part with some possible solutions, right? So what do we think could be made? What do we think we could be doing better or could be done by little efforts, by little people like us, unimportant people like us? How could we make a difference across the board?
Hey, Kev, I'm gonna jump into this real quick because I gotta run into something else. But I just want to go back and just reiterate this, that look at what tools you have today. Look at the platform that you have today. Stop trying to quantify it and start qualifying it by what God has given you and step into it. I don't care if you're scared. Kevin, I remember when you were starting this Godlogic project and one person was paying attention and two, it's irrelevant. Like you wouldn't walk away from a conversation one-on-one and said, hey, you wouldn't say, hey, go get 5 or 10 or 15 or 100 more people before I have this. You would have that conversation. And so I think that I want to encourage people with be a voice, steward your platforms, and let God, his word never returns void. Let God use you. And if you start stewarding it well today, I believe that he's going to increase it tomorrow. Whatever a man sows, that's what he's going to reap. So if you sow a lot of seed, you're going to reap a large harvest. And so just keep sowing, keep plugging away, keep taking, maximizing your tools and leveraging your platforms to do what God has called you to do. And when people try to stop you, when they make fun of you, when they laugh at you, when they tell you that you're nuts, who cares? Just keep pressing on. Let the Father take it, use it, because I believe that that's when the supernatural things begin to happen.
Yeah, amen. Be led by the Spirit and stop trying to lead the Spirit, That's so important. All right, Chris, amen. I'm going to let you go. Thank you for being on the show.
Hey, Jim, it was a pleasure. I appreciate you. You're such a smart guy, and I just love all the things that you're doing for our community and our churches, and it's always a pleasure to be, in the room with you. So thank you for this pleasure and honor today.
Well, one of these days we got to get in the room together. Yeah. I mean, we've done a couple of these now, and they've been apart. So one of these days we got to get together.
I would love it. Can't wait.
All right. Well, I love you, bro. I'll talk to you when you get up. I'll talk to you tomorrow, probably. See you.
Bye.
So, Jimmy, what is there a solution? And if there is, what is it? I mean, this is not a. I feel like the harvest in this case is overwhelming, not just plenty. In other words, for average people like you and I to kind of unite and start moving this ball down the field, what is it going to take?
Well, we were watching a TV show the other day, and I'm not going to go into what it was, but there was this terrible situation. It was kind of like almost Ruby Ridge type situation where people were with guns, and there was a gun battle, and people were killed on both sides. And so they were having this big funeral for the civilians that were killed, and the President of the United States went to one of the federal victims' wives and said, would you go to this funeral? Would you walk in because you're hurting also?
Yeah.
2 families are hurting right now. Multiple families are hurting right now in this situation. It's a terrible situation. We got to stop looking for the blame and start looking for the healing. And it's not going to happen until we can stop. Because when we saw Charleston, South Carolina, when they brought the kid up in front of the camera to talk, the court arrangement, the victims' families got up and said, we forgive you and we're praying for your soul. Oh my gosh. I mean, how could you sit and watch that and not just really just fall apart? 2 families are devastated, totally destroyed. And what do we do to lift them up and show God's love in this and say, listen, it is a travesty what happened, but if we hang on to it, all it's going to do is destroy us. The mother today of Arbery on the news said she wanted these guys killed. She wants the death penalty.
Yeah.
She wants them killed. What does that solve? That doesn't bring her son back. It doesn't bring the son back. It doesn't do anything at all except create this bigger, hole that we have that we continuously fall in. we as Christians need to step in and say, this is a terrible tragedy. How do we rebuild from this?
Yeah.
How do we comfort those? How do we, what job do we do that we can try to never let this happen again? What can we do in this? And so, if they see us join together, they see us work together, they see us pray together, they see us cry together, they see us laugh together, then maybe we see a change.
Yeah.
But until that point in time, it's just going to be this vicious circle. It's insanity. It's the same thing over and over and over again. And you kind of started out at the beginning, and we drifted away from it. But the press has a huge responsibility in this. And if we don't stop them from doing these things, turn them off, quit buying the products that they sell, just shut them down, they're going to continue to do this.
And I think I don't even watch, well, already, but I don't even watch the news hardly ever. But I've become convinced that the uninformed still hold a distinct advantage over people who are misinformed. If you're uninformed, you stand a chance of being right. If you're misinformed, you don't, right?
Yeah.
So it is a matter of, it's just a matter of, and a couple of years ago, I would watch Fox, say, and CNN in equal amounts and try to figure out who was telling the truth or where the truth lied, knowing they were both blowing smoke for the most part. But it's gone way past that now. And some of the things I see coming out of professional journalists, I don't understand why everybody can't see it, why anybody watches it at all. It's heartbreaking. So I appreciate you, Jimmy. I appreciate your being on.
Appreciate being here.
As always, I love you guys. I appreciate you. If there's anything I can do for you, message me, godlogicproject.com. If I can help, I certainly will. Know until they love you today, God loves you, and so do I. Receive that. Be blessed, and we'll speak soon. Thank you. Thank you for supporting the Godlogic Project. And if no one's told you they love you today, God loves you, so do I. Receive that. Be blessed. We'll speak soon. This has been a Rev Kev production. Your mileage may vary.
Shut up, Kevin.